Numbers as evidence, while probably more complex than you would realize, are towards the simple end of the spectrum when considering evidence. Evidence used by historians gets really complex, and as we shall eventually see, much depends on exactly which evidence the historian elects to use, or not, in presenting an argument. In part, this is a case of what evidence is available in the first place. It's not as if you can go out and survey the men who founded Boston Public Library in the 1850s to find out what they really thought about the Irish, even assuming they'd tell you the truth in the first place. The historian has to find evidence meeting the usual criteria of relevance, reliability, and validity in order to consider any question. Which means, if you think about it, there are some questions that simply cannot be addressed. Relevance is a far trickier issue in writing history than elsewhere, and what one historian considers relevant might be viewed by another as pop culture junk. We touched on this a bit earlier, and we'll return to that theme next week. Reliability. Well, there are some examples of out-and-out fake documents. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion comes to mind. But most of the stuff lying around from ages past is somewhere along a spectrum of reliability rather than out-and-out forgeries. Historical validity is, in one sense, closely linked to relevance. And again, the judgment of the historian in what evidence to use has much to do with the outcome of the story, or the final judgment as to causation or explanation. If you see a theme developing here, you're right. As usual, I wind up harping on the nature of evidence used for research of every kind. And I will make you a case that historians have had a great deal of influence in how we look at evidence. We'll also spend some time considering different kinds of evidence. By now you have some idea as to what the terms primary and secondary evidence are all about. Just to confuse things, I will add the term tertiary to the mix, mainly because as librarians we are directly responsible for constructing a lot of the tertiary sources available to researchers. I will touch on this later, but the ultimate goal of the historian is not to just tell a story, although we need stories to be told, but to provide explanation, to address the question of why. The late great Jesse Shearer once observed that the how of library land changes as we speak. What remains is the eternal why. That may not be exact, but it's pretty close and well worth thinking about.